Bass Edge Radio. You're listening to The Edge, everything bass fishing, coming to you worldwide from MegaWare Keel Guard Studios.
Hey, what's up, Bass Edge Nation? Welcome back to another episode. Man, it's great to have you here on this early November show for Bass Edge Radio. Man, finally, we are back. We are back in Texas. Happy to be here, man. It's been a long summer on the road, but super stoked to be back here in the studio. And actually, we're already starting to work on some updates. We started taping, Bass Edge here on YouTube just earlier this year after many years of being available in audio, and we still are. Spotify, iTunes, all of those great streaming podcast platforms catch us on those audio. But again, started here on YouTube earlier this spring, and we're going to continue doing some updates to the studio here. So we're excited about that. But man, they are going to come together over the next few episodes. But as always, Bass Edge brought to you by MegaWare Keel Guard. That's right, Keel Guard, providing you protection from abrasive rocks, concrete boat ramps, grinding sand, debris on those waterways. Don't be without MegaWare Keel Guard on your vessel. That would be a huge mistake. And of course, MegaWare products make great gifts for, I know a lot of bass clubs have an Angler of the Year ceremonies and this kind of things coming up over the next several months, and also Christmas. We'll get into more holiday MegaWare information as time progresses, but man, it's a great time to look at what you've got this fall and get ready for wintertime and next spring. Wintertime's a great time to add some products to your boat. So concluding today's episodes, make sure you go on over and browse keelguard.com. Take a peek at the additional products besides Keel Guard that MegaWare makes. Some of them becoming more and more popular, of course. You got the Flex Step, easy way to get in and out of your boat. You've got the Scuff Buster, protecting that bow eye area of your boat as you're loading your vessel. Of course, the Skeg Guard, man, I can't tell you how many people I know that have saved some money by having a Skeg Guard. And the newest product out of MegaWare is that Battery Guard. Man, this is an awesome cushion or savings for those lithium batteries. I know a lot of guys running lithiums now. They really help with the impact those boats can take, hitting waves, even driving up and down the road, hitting big bumps. So protect those expensive lithium batteries that everybody has out there. But Keel Guard's got the greatest products. Check them out, keelguard.com. Of course, MegaWare, that primary company there. Man, it is official. We talked a little bit about this last episode. We were wrapping up our last episode as the Harris chain on the Bassmaster EQ system. The last event of the year was just winding down. And it is official. Bass EQ qualifiers that they're going to compete in 2024. I've heard a couple people say this already. Some of the most ready rookies ever going to be coming into the Elite Series for 2024. They went through the 9-event gauntlet. It was a season like rookies have or qualifiers have never seen before on the BASS Open side. But JT Tompkins, John Garrett, Trey McKinney, Robert G, Wesley Gore, Tyler Williams, Kyle Patrick, Ben Milliken, and Logan Parks. And big shout out to I know John Garrett and Logan Parks, man, they've been on this for a long time, making that step, looking to get into the Elite Series. And as promised, we're going to have a new EQ qualifier on today's episode as the featured angler. And we've got John Garrett that's going to come to us after the break. He's going to talk to us about his 2023 season, as well as some of his preparation for 2024. And of course, he's going to bring us some fall fishing tips and tactics, so you don't want to miss that. You're going to catch some more bass in the month of November by hearing what John has to say. Man, the final 2023 regular season with NPFL just took place on Lake Lanier. Crazy enough, I just talked about this in our last episode. We brought it up that Patrick Walters has been having huge success throughout the Elite Series year, but also over there in PFL. He gets the W in that final regular season event there at Lake Lanier, winning another $100,000. I mean, just listen to these numbers. His winnings this year alone, 2023, between the BASS Elite Series and the National Professional Fishing League, $473,000, man. He won $236,000 in the NPFL, $237,000 in the Elite Series. Man, I just wonder how many full-time anglers are going to start looking at the NPFL now as a potential revenue generator, having more events. You hear a lot of guys saying, you know, well, I'd like to fish some more events. I'd like to add some events into my schedule. And at this point for Elite Series and Bass Pro Tour guys, you could fish the the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals, but those are hard to get into for the Elite Series guys. But it looks like this NPFL really doing a great job of scheduling around the Elite Series and giving those guys an opportunity to fish. So, man, it's going to be interesting to see how many anglers might jump in to the NPFL next year after Patrick Walter's success. But also want to give a shout out to Will Davis. Will Davis Jr., the Elite Series rookie in 2023. He got there by winning the national championship on Pickwick with the Bass Nation last year. He's the first angler ever to go back-to-back, which I couldn't believe this, but saw that stat, and the first angler ever to go back-to-back in the Bass Nation. And the reason that's so amazing is because every year the champion requalifies. He's able to fish again. So I don't know exactly how many years, but I'm going to say it's probably been at least 25 or so years that this event's been going on, and this is the first time Will Davis Jr. becoming a back-to-back champion, so congratulations to him. So he will actually take his classic berth through the Bass Nation Championship, and that got David Gaston, who was the first man out on the Elite Series AOY standings, into the Classic for 2024 over there at Grand Lake in Oklahoma. So interesting stuff going on there. As many of you know, I mean, it's just major announcements with MLF changing around the Bass Pro Tour future outlook, and they are going to be reducing anglers for 2025. So this is going to impact the 2024 season and who qualifies to go forward and fish the Bass Pro Tour in 2025. I believe most of the anglers are going to take their shot at qualifying in 2024 for the 2025 Bass Pro Tour. The interesting thing is only 50 anglers will be fishing in 2025, so that's going to leave many longtime pros basically looking for another place to fish. And let me just tap on this real quick. Those qualifiers, the 50 qualifiers, will consist of, because there's been some confusion, I think, and let me just clear it up for everybody, consists of the top 35 in career AOY average of the 80 anglers that fish the Bass Pro Tour currently, and then the top 10 after those qualifiers are announced will come from the 2024 Angler of the Year standings. And for the remaining qualifiers for the 2025 Bass Pro Tour, those 5 will come from the Tackle Warehouse Invitational Series. So for me, my thought is several MLF Bass Pro Tour anglers will be making some tough decisions on kind of where to fish, moving forward. Do they stick with MLF, try to requalify for the Bass Pro Tour in the invitationals? Do they go to the Bass route? Enter the Open's EQ division, attempt to qualify for the Elite Series there. We've seen several anglers do that. Jason Christie, Greg Hackney, Bobby Lane almost did this year, but there's a few others. Justin Atkins went back to the Opens, requalified for the Elite Series. So a few guys that potentially have that possibility or the means to do that. But maybe some decide to fish the NPFL. Man, I don't know where this NPFL is going to come together, but they're in a really good spot for 2024 and 2025 to kind of increase their awareness, their presence within the industry. They've got something going on there, and by nature of these other organizations kind of doing some shifting, could capitalize. But looks to me like really some rough roads ahead for several well-established full-time anglers in the next, 12 to 24 months. We'll see how that shakes out. The BASS Opens, the EQ division, did have some significant changes for the 2024 competition. More live coverage, I think, is the number one thing that's real beneficial. Second thing that I think is real beneficial is increased off limits and no information rule. They're going to a 14-day off limits and no information period prior to the events. They are having a slight increase in entry fee by $200 per event. Really nominally for an EQ angler over 9 events, not a whole lot of cash there. But the great thing is they're increasing the payout to 45 anglers. They're going to pay 45 anglers down in the field. And the bottom 45th angler, based on the full field, is going to double their money at $4,000 payback. So that was great to see. I think quite possibly making this even a more viable way for established anglers to jump into the EQs. I think the long-term, more mature or longer established pros like the off-limits period, of course. So I think that you're going to see maybe some more potential for anglers moving in that direction from the BBT if they choose not to fish the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals next year. But we're going to keep everybody kind of in the loop on what's happening there. There's so many things that could be changing. What's interesting is just there's nothing that's real structured that stayed the same over the last 5 or 6 years. I feel like throughout my time in bass fishing since the early 2000s, it's kind of been that way, but we've seen the tumultuous situations come up like we have over these last 5 or 6 years. It's been very, very, very interesting. But as I mentioned, we're going to keep everyone updated on the happenings and what's going on with the tour changes, where anglers are fishing and what they're looking at doing. Make sure you check out, it is the last major event of 2023 going on right now. We've talked about it here. Last episode, Mike McClellan did a great job of discussing, some fall fishing techniques, specifically some on Table Rock and that Midwestern territory of how he thinks the Toyota Championship will go down. The winner is going to get $200,000. I know I've mentioned this on about the last 3 podcasts, but man, that is just a huge payout. It's the 3rd largest payout of any tournament within bass fishing as far as the major levels in BASS, MLF, or now maybe I'm going to throw in the NPFL in there too. So we're going to see how that goes down. Make sure you check it out on MLFfishing.com. There is one final classic berth to be recognized. That's going to be in the BASS Team Series coming up later on this fall. So don't forget to check that out. And man, I appreciate everybody listening to the podcast and jumping on with us on YouTube. Be sure to subscribe, like, comment, all kinds of fun things we're doing. Make sure you watch that YouTube to get the stream. If you're listening to the audio broadcast right now, you can check it out on YouTube. Or as always, man, since 2009, we've been on the audio channels, iTunes, Google Play, Spotify, basically any of your favorite podcasting platforms. So be sure to check us out right there. Man, it's great to be back here in Texas. I got to say that. Stay tuned, because after this break, we are going to jump into our feature Angler Spotlight 2024 BASS Elite Series rookie John Garrett joins us on the show. We're going to be back in a moment. Y'all stay right here. Woo! More Bass Edge Radio.
You know the importance of protecting your investments, so choose the protection the pros pick. Grinding sand, abrasive rocks, and concrete ramps are no match for our patented technology. The MegaWare Keel Guard is made tough and made to stick. Install it yourself in less than an hour, providing the most dependable, most trusted protection for your boat, guaranteed for life. Insist on the original Keel Guard the pros have picked for 25 years. MegaWare Keel Guard. Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within.
Hey, here we are back with Bass Edge Radio. And like I said, it's great to be back in the studio in Texas. Um, it's really great to have a feature angler spotlight with this guy right here on the screen, John Garrett. John, man, it's awesome to have you here on the show. 2024 BASS Elite Series rookie. How does that sound, dude?
Sounds better than Bass Opens Pro. I'll say that. um, yeah, appreciate you having me on, and we're going to talk about other stuff. But that first 15 minutes that you had, there's so much going on in the fishing world right now. We could talk about that stuff for
Yeah,
hours.
yeah,
But glad to be on with you for sure.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you being here. We love to dive into a couple rookies joining the Elite Series the following year. It's been great to I've kept my eye on you. I know a lot of people have because you've been so dang close several times. But
Yeah.
let's talk a little bit about where you came from to let the listeners know kind of where John Garrett, evolved from more or less. But man, your media story begins early in your career back in 2016. College bracket champion. Man, obviously a huge deal there. You attended Bethel University. I think at that time, probably the forefront of bass fishing universities. There's so many other universities involved right now, but did it look like, if you look at your fishing performance and where you've been, it looked like you jumped right in to a full slate of opens in 2017, right after that. And were you still attending Bethel University at that time?
Yeah, so I won that college bracket as a freshman in college.
Wow.
So I was one of the youngest. I was, I might be the or one of the youngest people ever fished a classic. So I won that as a freshman. And when you fish the bracket, you sign a contract, and you basically have to fish the opens the following
Oh,
year.
wow. Okay.
So I did fish the opens. I missed a couple of them, but yeah. So I juggled the opens, my full college fishing schedule to keep my
That's great.
scholarship. I tried to pass my classes. I can't say I passed all of them,
But
but
you
I tried my
try.
best. Yeah.
That is so cool, man. That had to be just a whirlwind year, but man, jumping into it like that, getting that experience, I'm sure it was kind of an invaluable deal. But so it looked like you took off 2018, 2019, probably got back into the classroom a little bit more, but still fished obviously your college events and did pretty good. Saw you made national championship on the MLF side. Did some good things over there. Man, do you feel that early year on your opens kind of helped you? Did it hinder you because of the schedule was so crazy? Kind of getting to this reality of the Elite Series now moving into 2024?
Yeah, I will say that that first year of the opens kind of made it like I fished it and realized that really, and I had another podcast where I said the same thing. I feel like that I hound this subject, but college fishing directly correlates with that Bassmaster Opens or the MLF Toyota Series. It's like
Okay.
you have so many great guys, whether you're fishing against a team or individuals in the Opens or Toyotas. But when before I even fished the Opens, I was like, man, I was like, don't know if I could compete at this level. And really, if you have some success through college, you jump into the Opens, it's like it's almost directly corresponds. So all the guys, like myself, and you talked about Logan, like all the guys that came through college that had success, they had basically free experience. I know at
Yeah.
Bethel we did that, traveled for our tournament. So we traveled the country, and you could just basically say practicing for that next step in fishing. So like I said, opens, Toyotas, and college fishing almost directly
Real
corresponds with
similar.
the same level of talent for sure.
Wow. I'm going to jump back a sec because it kind of threw me off. You were a freshman when you won.
Yeah.
Man, I mean, you're obviously fishing in high school. That's why you choose Bethel University. You've
Mhm.
got this passion for bass fishing. Was that, did you almost think like that was too early, or did you think that was good timing? And how does it got? I mean, what were you, 18, 19 years old?
Yeah, 18, yeah. So, I'll be honest with you, I started a high school fishing team. This is how old I am. I know, they're just the high school fishing wasn't huge when I was in high school. I started a team my sophomore year. We kinda developed it my junior, senior year, fished, like, the very first ever Bassmaster high school events, my
Wow.
last couple of years of high school, and jumped into college and had that early success winning the bracket. And I kinda knew when I won that event going into the classic that realistically I had no chance of playing with the wolves of the fishing industry. Like, I was a little kid and, you know, and, I before I went to that event, I told myself that, "Hey, let me sit back, let me enjoy this. Yeah, I'm gonna fish as hard as I can," but I really did kinda soak it in for that
That's cool.
classic experience, and I'm glad I did that. Looking back at it, I learned a good bit about the industry, making connections and that sort of thing. But I took that experience as let me enjoy this as much as I can.
Right,
And then,
right.
after that tournament, I got a taste of that classic stage. I'm like, man, I could really get
You
used
can
to
really
seeing
do
that.
this.
Hopefully, yeah, that was nice. I would like to get back for sure. And that's kind of when I took my attitude in college, like, okay, let me try to get serious about this. Let me try to get
Right.
as good as I can because I skipped this earlier. In high school, I didn't really think that hard about fishing professionally or going to college and fishing. Had a little success in high school, and then the coach at Bethel University, Gary Mason, literally just showed up to my granddad's shop when I was working one day and offered me a scholarship. So I was like, all right, I'll try to go to college. I never thought about it. But yeah, we'll see about it.
And you're bass fishing there, so it kind of extended that too. So it made a lot of
Exactly,
sense.
yeah.
Man,
Yep,
do
for
you
sure, that
the camaraderie in that time frame? I mean, you got Tristan McCormick, obviously went to Bethel, Cody Huff. I'm sure there's others you could name. Those are
yep.
just a couple off the top of my head. Do y'all still like stay in touch and I don't want to say work together, but kind of, bounce stuff off
Oh,
industry wise, business wise, fishing wise, and kind of stay in a groove with each other that way?
absolutely, and when we were in college, we like you said, Bethel was like the powerhouse of bass fishing college bass
Yes.
fishing at that time.
Yes.
So, Gary had the pick of the litter. It was like, he's like, "Dude, that guy's good." Well, when Gary reached out to you, you're like, "I'd like to play football for Alabama." I wanna go fish there for sure. So, me, Cody Huff, Cole Floyd, KJ Queen, like
Cole
Garrett
Floyd,
Enders,
KJ.
Brian Paul, like, there was so
That's
many.
crazy names right there, right?
Yeah,
I mean, just
and
crazy.
yep, and we all got there at the same time in that 2015, 2016 timeframe. We all got thrown basically into a house from different parts of the country. We all just love to catch bass.
Right.
So, you have 7 or 8 literally of some of the best anglers across the country coming together with different backgrounds, different techniques, and all we did was talk bass fishing. We learned so much
Yeah.
off of each other, and we kind of formed this pact when we would go out to a college tournament. When we get back at night, we're going to talk about everything we did, everything we seen, and with 4 different boats on the water,
Yeah.
we would
That's a
break down a
lot.
lake like that. I mean, instantly,
Yeah.
whether it's something that Cole Floyd found out or Cody Huff or me, myself or Brian,
Right.
somebody was going to crack a piece of the code that first day. And we learned so much about bass fishing those 4 years at Bethel. It was unbelievable. And now that we're kind of taking our steps into professional fishing, it's
Yep.
like you said, like, well, how are you treating, the industry in this aspect, or,
Right.
how's it working with this sponsor? How's this going? Like, we end up, I would say, leveraging things off each other. That
Nice.
way it's like, don't settle for this, but take this. And
Yeah.
then, Cole has a different schedule than me and Cody have. So,
Right.
if Cole's fishing a tournament on, somewhere the Bass Pro Tour is that we don't have a tournament, Cole's like, dude, I found something out that was legit on this place. And we
Right,
voice,
right.
we still voice each other
Yeah,
all these things, and even though we're apart, we're still helping each other learn and become better anglers. Just
that
every
is
time we
so
talk to
cool.
each other.
Man, I think, when I grew up, that was something that, maybe I had a guy in my local community. I had a great friend, Tony Black, that I grew up fishing with in Virginia. And we used to bounce off everything. We started fishing the opens, but really we didn't know that many people. We knew some people, we didn't talk. You guys, and now with high school fishing, the platform, the college fishing platform, you are so much more in tune because you've kind of formed these relationships so early and you kind of take these steps together. It's really cool to see. So congrats on that. And I'm happy to hear that you guys still collaborate because I think a lot of times in bass fishing, and tell me if you feel like this as well, guys get, I don't know, selfish. They just get kind
Oh
of
yeah.
selfish on information or industry knowledge. And it's hard to acquire that information to create a successful career in the sport.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hate to put it this way, but I think it just what it boils down to is not a selfish jealousness, but it's like, dang, it's like you're almost jealous of like, man, why has Patrick Walters won 4 major tournament this year and I haven't? So why has he won 450 grand and I haven't?
Right,
You know,
right,
it
right.
it kind of gets to the point like that. It's like, you know, more as you kind of progress, it's like you want to do more things, keep to yourself, do things for yourself,
Sure.
and besides splitting that piece of reward pie up with all your other people, with all your
Yeah.
friends.
Yep. It
But
makes
that's some,
sense, but
yeah, yeah, and that's something we've always kind of like, hey, like Cole helped me get here, I helped Cole get here, Cody helped us both with this. So it's like we're going to keep each other in the loop, and hopefully we're going to all scratch each other's back equally throughout our career.
yeah, yeah, it's great to see, man. All right, let's go back to you jumped back in the opens in 2020,
Yep.
kind of did the school did you graduate in 19? I think that
I,
was the deal, right? Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
So
I did
you
not fish in 19, and that's when they took the MLF Bassmaster split happened, or
right.
whatever year that was.
Yeah, it
That
was
was the year I
19.
did not fish. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, 19. So, but 2020, man, consistent finishes in the AOY standings throughout different divisions. 4 seasons, some 30 plus tournament BASS Opens. You're a Bass Elite Series angler now, and I know that, man, that had to be hard to just keep pushing through, keep positive attitude, keep sponsors maybe going. I know you've got a good little
Yep.
sponsor, been there. But what can you tell the listeners that evolved for you over those 30 tournaments, over those 4 years that allowed you to kind of become full circle and accomplish this Elite Series bid?
Yeah. Well, I'll start with saying that you're right. It was so tough mentally because
Yeah,
it's like graduated college, you cannot make a living fishing the Bassmaster Opens. Don't matter how good you do. Like I had a great year this year. I won like 70,000, which isn't a
I
lot.
I added it up.
And
It was 69.5. That's
yeah,
right.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So I mean, by the time you spend 35,000, you can't live off 30,000 in a year. Just can't do it. So mentally, it's very challenging more than anything because I was like 1 or 2 or 3 spots out every single year, and it begins to wonder in my head, like, Kurt, like, am I supposed to do this? It
right,
like, I know at times I have all the confidence in the world, but sometimes on the water, it's like you question yourself, and then at the end of the year, you come up this short, and you start to wonder, like, well, is that a sign? Am I supposed
right,
to, lay concrete or roof, or am I
right,
supposed to do something else
right,
besides hold a fishing rod? And it gets to a point where something needs to happen to support my family, support my wife, my kid, and the Bassmaster Opens is. I'm not saying it's not it completely, but it's a hard road, um, and really, I guess one of the biggest things that just kind of kept me going was I would look back like at other options. I don't want to
yeah.
sit at
I
a
don't
desk eight to
right.
five. I don't want to drive a semi truck. Like I don't want to do that hard labor, and I really want to bass fish. and I don't want to let down the people that have supported me since college,
Yeah.
sponsor wise, family wise, and like far as my wife and whatnot,
Yeah.
just to keep going. So eventually, thankfully, it broke through. I know for a lot of people it doesn't, but just my mindset this year was a little different, about being strategic on the water, having confidence all year, and learning to do what I'm really good at and not doing what you're supposed to do at each fishery, I think is kind of what pushed me through for this year.
There you go. We'll get into that a little bit later, what it is that John Garrett likes to do out on the water. But you talked a little bit about, the financial drain, the toughness of staying in the opens, trying to make it a portion of your living because you have to with spending that much time doing it. Nobody's gets, 10 weeks off of vacation or some, or at least not generally, unless, maybe you're working for family or something like that those things can
Yeah.
happen, which are great for anglers that are in those situations. How did you particularly, just to give knowledge to listeners, overcome those difficulties that you talked about? It's not the opens is not a way to generally make a career. Like you say, you make 70K in a year. You spending 45 to 55 easy. Where does that go?
Yeah. So the way I kind of just set my basically my life the past few years, like let me work as hard as I can while fishing the opens to get work hard enough for my sponsors where I can at least get my entry and my travel covered. So I was working hard on that aspect of it. And
Right.
I also ran a duck hunting guide business in the
Oh
winter.
wow.
So starting December 4th, I'll be working 60 days straight to January 31st. So I love the outdoors. I love to fish. I love to duck hunt, something that I've always done. I had to figure out something to do to support basically everything in a
Right.
2-month time frame when I'm not bass fishing, and that kinda came out to duck season, honestly. So that was our 2-month off time frame. I love doing it. So yeah, so I run a duck hunting guide business outside of my fishing and, aspect of stuff too.
So is that something that you grew up loving? Like duck hunting was a thing for you, through high
Yeah.
school and your college days?
Yeah, for sure. My granddad I had an amazing granddad. He owned a marina at UNC Marine, so he sold boats for a living.
Right.
He basically sold boats, caught fish, and killed ducks for a living. And every weekend, sometimes when I was in school too, if it was warm enough, we were going fishing, and if it was cold and during the winter, we were going duck hunting. So
Right.
I grew up as hanging on to my granddad's pocket. If he was throwing a rod, I was throwing a rod, and if he was shooting the ducks, I was shooting the ducks. That's how I
That's
got into
great.
that.
I think a lot of people don't understand the commitment outside of just the fishing part that, or in the sacrifice that it takes to fish the opens. And I'll say that in the Elite Series, the Bass Pro Tour, the Tackle Warehouse Invitationals, all of these series that you have to put that much time in to have or try to have some success. Folks don't understand that there is a element of each of those anglers that's making this push to achieve this goal that is so sick, right? Like
Yeah.
that we will do so many things to just get to that point that 95% of other people aren't interested in making those sacrifices. And I see that with your duck hunting 60 some days straight and that kind of thing and how you've been able to come together for that. So I think that's a great information for folks out there of how that can be done and really the mental uh, dedication that it takes to do that portion of the
Yeah.
thing.
I was
Um,
not to cut you off, but
no, yeah,
I was talking to my wife about this same subject,
right,
and I told her that, you know, it's kind of unfortunate that I love bass fishing this much
right,
because if I would have put all my time and effort and the amount of time and effort really into anything else, we could probably be millionaires,
absolutely,
honestly. Yeah, so and we're chasing such a small dream with such a little reward payback.
yeah,
If we spent this amount of talent and time and energy on something else, we could be probably so successful in whatever we try to do
That's
because
true.
honestly, looking back through everything, this might be literally one of the hardest things to make a living at that you could possibly do.
I couldn't agree more. It's a wild deal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I talked to my wife could tell you the best patterns for me to go fish table rock in the fall. She could just start spitting. Oh yeah, maybe you should throw a buzz bait or a plopper. Maybe throw a shallow crab. I mean, she could just start throwing because she's so like for 20 years. That's all. I mean, I don't say that's all she's heard, but she's heard it a lot more than she probably wants to hear.
Oh, for sure.
But all right, man. So as your career, over the last 6 seasons, you've seen a lot of changes in the industry. We talked about that right out of the gate. Especially the past 12 months back in 2019. But man, it seems like every year, there's some changes within the industry. What opportunities first do you see as a professional angler? And have any of these changes through this time frame kind of intimidated you or scared you off or tried to scare you off a little bit from having a career in this industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I have not been doing it as long as, for sure you have or a lot of the other guys, but even I'm gonna say when I started this journey and when I made the classic in 2016, it was just in this 8-year span, it was so much easier to make partnerships and, get your foot in the door with companies then and now it's so hard,
Yeah.
and we got more professional anglers than ever, but we also have more fishermen. It's so crazy what the fishing industry is right now and how hard it is as us anglers to make a living strictly off the fishing industry.
Yeah.
It's really hard and now eye-opening because I always had this, I don't know, inspiration or hope in my head that once you make the elites that
It
um,
all opens up.
pocketbooks
But
that all
yeah.
opens up. And it's just not true. I mean, people that I've been working with literally since 2016 have stepped up some, but those new relationships, like it doesn't matter where you're at in your career. I feel like you have to know and talk to the right people and have a connection. Doesn't matter if you're fishing in college or high school or the Bassmaster Elites or Bass Pro Tour. You have to have a personal connection with somebody to be able to get your foot in the door with a good lasting partnership.
Yeah.
And that was kind of what opened my eyes up the past 4 or 5 months is in me trying to get things ready for next year.
Right.
It's not easy. Not easy for anybody from what it sounds like.
Yeah.
So intimidating is definitely, um, it's for sure intimidating, because it's like, okay, I'm at this final step of making the elite series, but ends aren't meeting like they
You haven't
should
you
in
haven't
like
got to the
they should make.
final step yet, John.
Well, you know what I'm saying. It's like,
No, but
you
yeah, I totally do. But it feels like okay, and I get why even mentally that would come out of you because it's like okay, I'm here, right? I'm at the top. I'm at the pinnacle of the sport. I'm in the Bassmaster Elite Series, and it took all of this to get there. And what's crazy about this is I'm great friends with Brian Schmidt. He's had a good last couple of years, but man, 20 months ago, at the end of the 2019 or the 2022 season, it was like, am I going to be able to stay in the Elite Series or not? And it's like so as hard as you've worked to get where you're at today, it's going to be that much more work to stay and succeed. And the great thing is, though, if you do this again now on this next level, the flower will open. The money will start flowing in for you. That's for sure. So it's interesting how that works. I think a lot of people on the outside, looking into the fishing industry, don't understand that process.
yeah, absolutely. And then, you know, when you're trying to get that extra money or extra this or that to support you through the year, you hear, leading up to this year from everybody. I'm not putting anybody on the spot, but it's
Yeah.
like, well, make it to the Elite Series, we'll talk, or hey, budgets are tight, or this, and this, and nothing's changing for us as anglers, I feel like, in that aspect of things, because
Yeah.
in the whole realm of the fishing world, the tournament angler, that people that we're reaching, such a small portion of people that buy a fishing license, is going forward is how big of an impact do we actually have? Because the 50 million people that buy a fishing license, how many people are tuning into Bass Live out of those
Right.
people and buying products that we sell? So I can't blame anybody for the spot that us pro anglers are in, except for ourselves putting us here, really.
Sure.
But yeah, it's a pretty crazy world that what
It
we're trying
is.
to make a living in, for sure.
So thinking of diving into the EQs for an angler down the street from you, considering the obstacles, maybe down the street from me, whoever it is that's thinking about diving into, this profession or this tournament fishing career, maybe something you overlooked that you realized during your journey. Now looking back at your time in the opens, what's one or two things that you would give advice for someone to have similar success to John Garrett?
Yeah, so like I said this earlier, and it's basically everything has came down to this year is first off, put your time in and work literally as hard as you can work at making yourself a better angler. Because you look at some guys like Jordan Lee, for example. Like I'm not saying he doesn't work hard because I know he does, but it's like
Right.
I feel like when he gets in the water, fish jump in his live well. It's that
Right.
easy. He just goes over somewhere and just catches them like crazy. That's not me. Like I have to work so hard to make things, meet on my end. So if you have that talent or gifted talent, like what I was saying Jordan Lee has, like that's great. But if you put the time and effort in, you can make it happen yourself, whether you have that special gift or not. And then realizing, what am I good at? That's what I did this year. So this year I worked as hard as I've ever worked on and off the water for that success, and I literally stuck to what I was really good at all year long, even though if that's not what you're supposed to do at that type of fishery.
Right. Right. Let's talk about that before we're going to get ready to go to break. But it's a great segue into some fishing talk we're going to do after the break. Well, what is it that John Garrett leaned on this year? What are your fishing strengths that you felt you were able to capitalize on throughout 9 different BASS Opens to get to an Elite Series qualification?
Yeah, I'm I really like to fish offshore more than anything, and I was raised on the Tennessee River, so I have that just thought in my head that there's a magical spot on every single lake, which is not the case. I mean, it is the case, but you never find it really. But
Right.
I grew up looking for schools of fish that other people weren't finding, and on all the other lakes I go to, I transitioned my offshore fishing for schools into fishing for offshore just residential fish.
Hmm.
So I was fishing a stump or a rock or a stick, like something that is barely off the bank or way out in the middle that could hold one fish.
Gotcha.
And my thought process, like, hey, I got 3 days, 4 days to find 15 fish houses, really, whether
Yeah.
it's 15 stumps or whatever it's holding a fish. So I just went and fished for individual bites in practice and in the tournament, but offshore instead of trying to do that on the bank because, as you know, 250 guys, not much gets untouched on the bank. You know, there's
Especially 5 days
there's a
of
lay
practice.
down. Yeah, for sure. Most all good looking lay downs have a fish on them the first day of practice. So
Right.
my thought is, let me find that, but submerge. Let me find that
Hmm.
off the bank and try to find as many residential bites as I could find. And that really worked well everywhere we went this year. I'm not so sure if it can't work at all times throughout the country because
Right.
when fish are supposed to be shallow, everything lined up to be shallow. I would look shallow, just off the bank shallow at some of
Yeah.
the same cover, and now transition from 40 foot to 2 foot of water. But individual fish offshore is what I did all year long.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, it worked magically, man. We're gonna take a quick break. We're going to give a special thanks first to Bass Pro Shops as an associate partner here with Bass Edge Radio. Bass Pro Shops reminding you we all live downstream. We're going to return with some fall fishing tactics with 2024 BASS Elite Series rookie John Garrett right after this message.
Plenty of sunshine.
Come on, man, let's roll! What the?
To catch the fish, you need to be one with the fish.
With PowerPole shallow water anchors, you'll get the ultimate in precision, power, and control, so you can catch more fish. No face paint or phony fins necessary.
Excessive shock and vibration are two leading causes for premature battery failure. Prolong the life of your batteries with the new MegaWare Battery Guard. The Battery Guard sits under your battery and absorbs excessive vibration and bounce, reducing G-shock by up to 80%. Great for boats or anywhere shock and vibration can damage a battery. The Battery Guard can easily be trimmed to fit virtually any custom shape or battery size. Save money by protecting your batteries. Spend more time on the water and less on maintenance. Find yours at megaware.com.
All right, here we are, back with some more Bass Edge Radio. We got 2024 Elite Series angler John Garrett with us on today's episode in the feature angler spotlight. First half of the show, we got to know John, really kind of picked his brain on how he went through the Bassmaster EQs. This segment of the show, we're going to talk about fall fishing, how we can catch more fish in November. Here we go, John, man. I got to say, it seems like many anglers are becoming more, seasonal, right? Just in general, like hunting is season, September, October, November, December. Man, it seems like bass fishing is really just becoming a seasonal sport, like February through June. And then it kind of tails off a little bit. But man, I think fall's a great time to be out on the water. Mm-hmm. I want to get your opinion on how you like to fish some in the fall, but right now, what can you do in the fall fishing and taking time, spending it on the water that's going to help you in the primary tournament seasons of January through July, say?
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, fishing is definitely seasonal, and we all see it when we start fishing come January and February. The fishing is tremendously better everywhere you go. And I think it's because they get a couple months off from seeing our baits. I really do. And, fishing in the fall, you can learn so much about what the fish do and about the fishery. You got so many places that are at winter drawdown and learn a lot about the lake that correlates to, your tournament time when the water might be up. And in the fall time, it's really about bait fish, really. So you learn a lot about where the bait fish travel, go move up and down the water column, up and down in the creeks. And, as you know, that all the shad and bait fish are super reliant on oxygen. So you got some bait fish that run to the back of the creeks. Maybe there's some cooler water back there. And you got shad that's been living deep all year coming up in the water column to get cooler water, get some sunlight. And that kind of correlates to after the wintertime phase when the shad start moving in the spring and the fish start moving up. So I kind of consider getting in this early to late fall, early winter, a really good warm up of that early in the spring fishing, because a lot of fish are going to be migrating in and out of the same ditches and drains and same places. And the shad act nearly identical as they do in the fall and early spring too. So it's a good learning period to learn about fish behavior and your lake, on winter drawdown. So
Yeah, it's interesting you say that about shad behavior and how they'll utilize, what they're utilizing in the fall right now. They'll utilize those same places, and you can find those same fish that were, feeding on those shad, maybe spawning in some of those creeks or coves that were real good in the fall. Another thing I like to do, just throw a quick tip out there here, like at Lake Amistad, the best grass later in the year is going to be your best grass early in the year. So I also think that's another great thing that anglers can look for, that can spend some time out on the water in the fall, that's going to give them advantage in the springtime. John, what are your three top lure choices for the fall, and not necessarily how you're going to work them, but what is your strategy in using them to locate bass in the fall behavior patterns?
Yeah, so I mean, really, I don't travel a whole lot in the fall. I'm kind of local, so I'm
Sure.
on Kentucky Lake and Pickwick, and love throwing a big topwater, whether that's a walking bait or a plopper style bait. A lot of these fish, they get up shallow on bars and banks and flats. And as you know, fish love to feed up in the fall. And I just love catching some on topwater. So I would say a big topwater, maybe a lipless crankbait as well to be able to cover water and imitate some of the smaller shad. And sometimes I like to flip a little bit, some shallow wood in the back of creeks, on flats, boat docks. So I'll say a topwater, a lipless, and probably a flipping bait.
Very cool. Let's break those down a little bit. You talked top water on shallow ledges. What do you see that the fall behavior transition is to those ledges, kind of when that occurs? Do you have like some key water temperatures, or how do you identify that movement? Is it just by trial and error? Just help the listeners a little bit, kind of guide them in how to maybe get on that style of bite on their local lake.
Yeah, for sure. So, especially on a river system, TVA included, and other rivers, is when you have a lake that has ledges on it, 98% of the year, those fish are going to live around a ledge or a creek channel. And this time of year, those giant gizzard shads and the bigger yellowtails or thread fins, they've spent a lot of time out deep in that cooler moving water, and they're starting to come up. So all they do is elevate up the ledge and get on top of the flats. And that's what those big largemouth do and smallmouth that we don't see a whole lot through the year. I mean, you hear ledge fishing and it's all great when the fish first get out there, but they first get out there on top of that stuff and then they slide off into no man's land and they're hard to catch. So those fish are kind of been disappeared for months. Now they come up on the shallower water and they're basically fresh fish again for the fall. And those shad really get up in that basically couple inches to 2 foot of water where the sunlight's hitting the bottom. You start to get some algae on some of those shell beds and some of that harder bottom. Those big gizzards and threadfin feed on that, and that's where those bass stage up. So you have giant main river flats, and you either look for the high spot on a deeper one, like if it's a 4 or 5 foot ledge, you look for a high spot. If it's super shallow one, less than 2 foot, you look for indentions. So you just look for places that,
Very
you
cool.
know, as you know, flats are where they feed, but if you look for a place they sit, that's the gold mine for sure. So they're just following the bigger bait fish, and those bigger bait fish live near that river system almost all year.
Man, that's a great detail. Thanks for that. Let's
Yeah,
dive into that lipless. That was your
yeah.
bait choice number two, lipless crankbaits. Has lipless really come to the point where you can use it effectively on forward-facing sonar, or is this more of a shallow flat scenario, or how do you use that lipless crankbait in different scenarios?
Yeah, I mean, you can use it. I'm not necessarily targeting the fish on forward facing as much as I'm targeting the structure.
Okay.
A lot of that is kind of, on those flats, but as you get in some of the creeks or on the main lake banks around where I'm at, is they tend to feed on the smaller bait fish, really shallow mud flats with hard spots, creek channel bends around the bank. But that lipless is something that you could cover a lot of water, and that, like I said again, they're feeding up. So you're above their head, kind of get a nice reaction bite, and just all around a great fall time lure. Imitates a small shad, and you can cover a lot of water and fish it in a lot of different scenarios.
Like it, like it. You, retrieve wise, do you play with that a lot, or do you have a specific retrieve that you feel like works most effectively for you?
Yeah, it like you were saying, you're on Amistad. Like if I'm around some grass, I love pumping it. I love trying
Okay.
to get. I love trying to get that bait hung up. That's kind of the key when I'm fishing grass. And then if I'm fishing some hard spots or just mud bottom, I throw it out, rod tip up, and I'm just winding it over everything. But if I'm fishing hard stuff or the bank, I'm keeping it above the cover. And if I'm around some grass or a steeper riprap bank or something, I like yo-yoing it.
Very cool. All right, great stuff. Last one you
Yep.
talked about was flipping a little bit. Sounded like pretty shallow. I think most
Yep.
people ignore how shallow fish get this time of year. Let's talk a little bit about that and what makes this flip and bite work for you.
Yeah. So back to what I was saying about some of those flats, and a lot of those fish get on those mud flats in the back of creeks or on really flat main lake banks, and they roam around up there and chase shad. And if there's literally a stick, there's going to be a fish holding on most of those sticks. It's just a little piece of cover they can get behind, a little shade, and a lot of times they're so shallow you can't wind anything by it if it's not a little top buzzbait or something. So I like getting up really shallow, kicking up mud, and flipping a little creature bait or a little jig or whatever. It's just that seems to be more of what people think is a springtime deal when the water's
Mhm.
warming up, but it's also when the water's cooling off. And those fish there's a certain population of fish that get super shallow in the fall that kind of get ignored around most parts of the country, I would say.
Right, right. There's the fall fishing. I think a lot of people start talking about fall in September,
Yeah.
late September, mid September. You start getting that bait fish rising. You start getting some of those gizzard shad, moving off of that deep stuff. And all of a sudden you start to get some movement, maybe some schooling fish. You start to see these changes. The days become shorter, water temp starts to cool a little bit. But man, I think so many people give up on fall fishing so soon they never realize the magic of fall. Where do you see the magic begin? Is it a water temperature deal? When I say magic, when fall fishing gets good, you're catching, usually 15 to 30 fish. Sometimes you can get into a back of a pocket and crack 40 or 50, right?
Yeah.
So what is it? Where is that time frame? Because I think we're approaching it right here, this first part of
Yeah.
November and on as we get into it. And a lot of people have put everything up, right? We talked about that earlier. What is that magic that happens, and what is that scenario you see that comes into play that fires it off?
Yeah. Water temperature has a huge impact on it, I would say. And I think the later in the year it is, like if it's warmer, like we've had a pretty warm fall. We're just now hitting our first few cold fronts.
Yep.
The longer that progresses, I think when the water finally cools off, it makes it that much better. And I see that happening around that 55-degree mark.
There you
Um,
go.
yeah, you still got a top water feed going on, and those fish know, like, dude, wintertime's coming. I
Right.
need to eat. And once you get below that like 48-degree range,
Okay.
and they're almost like, okay, it's wintertime. And
Right.
you start
Okay.
seeing fish go off deep. The bait goes deep. I say from that 50 to 55-degree range, you see a major feed up in our shallower realms of the fishing world. And most people have hung it up, but those fish have a natural instinct. I need to feed up for winter. Winter's coming, and all those bait fish, a lot of the bait fish are up shallow and whatnot. So I would say the 50 to 55-degree range. Um, about we're creeping up on it. You're right.
Yeah.
It's happening
Yeah.
like right now. So
It's
I'd say
gonna
a
come
water
up.
temperature is a really big thing.
Yeah, this last 2 or 3 days of October and this first day of November, when you saw those, I don't know if you've watched or talked to Cody or Tristan. I know Tristan's up there at the
Yeah.
Toyota Championship on Table Rock too. They spent a couple mornings in the 20s. So
Yeah.
things definitely cooling down and getting into that magical level. But it's great you were able to provide the listeners with some of those keys of your behavioral change that you see that makes that happen. Um, Last thing I want to ask you is because I think the northern parts of the country are going to start seeing this real soon, and that's that transition between that magical fall period, which to me only lasts 2 or 3 weeks. It's kind of a short time frame because the water temp starts to cool and then it just plummets, right? And it's a short zone. Even you mentioned about a 7-degree zone right there between 55 and 48. When it starts to cool into those high 40s, down into the mid 40s, how is it that you go continuing to target fish that you found in the fall behavior pattern? Do you have to change tactics and just slow down a little bit, or do you have to completely move areas and look for different cover structure and depth zones?
Yeah, so you get in those same areas because a lot of those areas that are good in the fall have deep water access nearby. That's kind of all year round. You have that. I have this saying where fish winter, they move in and out of drains. So I say they winter in drains, they follow drains in, but they follow points out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I kind of like to base my stuff on. So if I'm fishing in fall or early spring, I kind of picture my bass highway in drains. So I'm looking for places that are deep between shallow areas, whether it's a creek channel or just a ditch between 2 points. That's where I base my stuff in. It seems to stand pretty true is that they move in through drains and out on points. So that wintertime fishing is basically the drains and creek channels and river channels near those flat areas that you found in the fall.
Very
They may
cool.
move a good bit, but generally, if you had an area that was good in the fall with bait fish, those fish are going to be nearby, deeper in the drain.
Yeah, yeah. And then you talked about it earlier. Maybe coming right back in the spring if it's a
Yep.
big population of fish and have a good population. So fishing in the fall can lead to a successful spring on your home body of water for sure.
Yep.
Man, John, it's been so awesome having you here on Bass Edge, man. We're wishing you the greatest success on your first Elite Series campaign in 2024. Do you have any final thoughts for the listeners before we close down the interview today?
No, I don't think so.
All right.
Look forward to, I'm sure we'll be doing more of these in the future. And yeah, appreciate you having me on.
Absolutely. Where can folks catch you on Instagram or YouTube? Do you have a consistent YouTube channel right now?
I do not have a consistent YouTube channel, unfortunately, but I do have a Facebook and Instagram at John Garrett
Okay.
Fishing, so they could
John
follow
Garrett
along
Fishing.
there.
Awesome,
Yep.
man. That's great to hear. There you go, guys. John Garrett, man. Again, really appreciate you being here. We're gonna be right back with my closing thoughts. John, have an awesome winter. We will see you next spring on the Bassmaster Elite Series. Y'all
Yep,
stay
sounds
tuned.
good.
Bass Edge Radio will be after this message.
Nitro, a rush of tournament adrenaline. Nitro, the choice of champion, where performance meets play. Nitro, a big water beast, a pure fishing machine. Nitro, release the champion within. Nobody wants to run out of power when they're on the water. There is a better way. Introducing the Charge Marine Power Management Station from PowerPole that does the work of 3 devices, a traditional battery charger, a charge on the run, and an emergency start system. PowerPole Charge.
Hey, what's up, everybody? Back here, Bass Edge Radio. Your host, Kurt Dove. Man, some closing thoughts on what I thought was a fantastic interview with John Garrett. And John brought the goods on some fall fishing. It was also great to hear his story about how he came through the college series and then into the Open Series, and now a Bassmaster Elite Series Pro. Man, if you liked this interview, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like button, comment below. Let us know what other anglers you'd like to hear from here on Bass Edge Radio. Man, it's always fun not only learning more about the kind of the growing up or the background of a lot of these anglers, but also, man, it's just great to hear their fishing tips and tactics for the time of year that these shows are taking place. I'll be using some of the tips that John gave. Let's talk about a few of those. Drains in the spring, points moving out in the fall. I thought that was a huge tip for anglers to look at something and kind of get started trying to locate bass in the fall behavior pattern. You're going to see this behavior pattern from now all the way through about mid-December, depending on exactly where you are in the country. But John also had a great tip there on when that premium window is. He likes that mid-50s, even into right at 50 degrees. He feels like that's when the fish are really active and are really feeling the pressure of winter coming and them wanting to put on that fall feed bag. So that's typically a great time of year to go out and catch a ton of fish. Sometimes they can be sporadic, so you've got to look a lot of places. But I feel like when you find them, they are there and they're ready to be caught. They are very, very active fish. But it's dependent because of that shad orientation, just like John talked about. They're just shad oriented. They're wanting to follow these shad in and out of these creeks, really feed up for the fall. So if you find that magical area, keep moving fast. Don't stay in one spot waiting for the fish come to you. Keep checking different backs of creeks, different target zones, flats. I really liked how John also talked about the topwater bite lasting into the 50s. A lot of people put that away a little bit too early. I feel like John likes to keep that out even as the temperatures are into the 50s in the fall. But also that lipless crankbait, man, what a great tip there. That's just a fish catcher. And if you're struggling and can't find those wads of fish, you're still going to find, like John mentioned, those isolated fish on wood in the back of creeks. And that's how he qualified for the 2024 Elite Series. Finding isolated targets on these pressured bodies of water, big fields in the Bassmaster Opens, and he's able to find isolated areas where he could go pick up a fish here, a fish there. He called it a fish house. So he was looking for 15 fish houses for every tournament out there. So that was a great way for John to kind of explain what was going on. Been talking about events coming up, man. It's the season's winding down. Right now, that Toyota Series Championship going on Table Rock Lake. Go check that out at mlffishing.com. I mentioned last episode the NPFL possibly having a championship this fall. Well, they just announced their 2024 schedule. The championship from 2023 AOY standings is going to be in March 2024. Still having that tournament down here where I live at Lake Amistad. So that's going to be the first championship that they're going to put on in that tournament circuit. Like I say, I really think the NPFL is in a great position to pick up some anglers here of the next, 18, 24 months moving forward based on a lot of changes through the other organizations. But, man, that kind of wraps it up. We're going to watch that stuff. We are going to check out what's going on in the fishing world. We're going to talk to some more anglers about plans for 2024. Man, I didn't want to dive into the MLF changes too much. We'll talk a little bit about that more as things progress, because what I'd really like to know is what happens in 2025 going into 2026. Where do those anglers stand and how are those requalification processes going to be? Are they going to continue to protect the AOY average guys over the years of the BBT, or will they start going back into a majority of the current AOY standings being a part of that tour moving forward in 2026? But man, be sure we're going to stay on top of it. Stay tuned here to Bass Edge Radio. Again, we're going to have a new episode. November 15th is going to be that next episode. We're going to be studying up, continuing late fall fishing strategies. Looking forward to another feature angler spotlight. Hit that subscribe button. You don't want to miss another episode of Bass Edge Radio. Adios. We'll see you all next time.